Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by my good friend, esteemed colleague, newest member of the On Texas Football family, my man Jeff Howe. We're going to dive into two positions that are having probably their best era ever at Texas under Steve Sarkisian, and I don't think that's a coincidence. We'll dive into that, but first, let's thank the sponsor of our fantastic program, Football Theory. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you've had any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, do not hesitate to please give her a shout today. 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. All right, let's dive into it, because let's start with the running back, because I started looking at running backs under Sark in the passing game. Mm-hmm. And I heard Sark say this at a coaching clinic. It had to be a few years ago. I mean, it might have been right before he got to Texas. And it stuck with me because I think he's right on the money. I think he was ahead of his time. He's no longer ahead of his time. I think everybody else is kind of caught up with it. But he said at the time that running backs are the most underutilized position in the passing game, most underutilized weapon in the passing game. And honestly, the history of Texas proves him right in that regard. Like, have you ever gone back and looked at some of the reception numbers of some of the greatest running backs in Texas football? Have you done it?
Not great.
It's mind-blowing, actually, when you go back and look at some of the outside. Now, we understand, but even Deontay Foreman, most recently, Deontay Foreman was all-time great running back at Texas, right? Won the Doak Walker Award, over 2,000 yards. Because he had 7 receptions that season where he won the Doak. 7.
Doesn't shock me, because you got to remember, too, Rod, the veer and shoot. Which, by the way, that's an offense that, I say this, Jeff Lebby could have a great year at Mississippi State, and, Heupel runs like a version of it. And obviously Kendall Briles is still doing his thing. It seems like college football figured out the veer and shoot like the way Art Briles ran it at Baylor. Or maybe it's just because Art Briles wasn't dialing it up anymore that's why the offense fell off. I don't know which is the result. But, yeah, that was the point of that offense, was spread you horizontally and have everything predicated off the vertical passing game to open up the middle of the field for the run. They weren't throwing a lot of swing passes in that offense.
No.
A lot of screens, check downs. Yeah, that wouldn't happen in the veer and shoot.
You're right. That offense, you're right. Good point. That offense actually traditionally probably just doesn't focus or prioritize running backs in the passing game. But go look at, even Bijan. Obviously when Sark first got here, that's a different conversation. But Bijan's biggest number in the passing game, 2021, he got 26 receptions. He had 19 in 2022. Cedric Benson, I was here for those years. I mean, he was underutilized in the passing game. 22 receptions is the most that he had in a season. If you go look at Jamal Charles should have been a weapon. I mean, should have really been just a potent, lethal weapon in the passing game. Most receptions he had, 18 in a season. Ricky Williams, most receptions he had was 25. Ramon Taylor, 27 was the most that Ramon Taylor had, and he was only here at Texas for 2 seasons. My point is this, but Sark, and I was shocked at this actually when I went back and looked at it. Jaden Blue and Trey Weisner both last season. Now they are playing 16 games. I understand that, so you got more games that you're playing. But during the season, and I brought this up before, they were both top 10 in running back targets. 7th and 8th in running back targets. Unbelievable. And the thing about Jaden Blue was truly a weapon. He was first in receiving touchdowns among running backs. And what I love about him, I went and looked at vertical routes downfield for running backs, because Sark says he wants to start getting, he said this at the same clinic. I heard him say running backs are the most underutilized weapon in the passing game. He said that he likes to get his running backs on vertical routes down the field, not just the swings and the screens. Jaden Blue is probably the best example of that. He did a little bit with Bijan here and there out of empty formation, stuff like that. But with Jaden Blue, he got the Texas route in there. He loved that wheel route down the field. And Jaden Blue on deep targets, he was 7th among running backs in the country on deep targets, 20-plus yards targets downfield. On intermediate targets, he was 3rd on intermediate targets. Those are 10 to 20 yards. Deep targets are 20 plus yards down the field. So it was the realization of what Sark said at that coaching clinic was Jaden Blue and the way that he used him. Trey Wiseman was more of his weapon in the screen game. Jaden Blue was definitely more of his weapon in the vertical passing game with the running backs. It was, like I said, we haven't seen anything like that in the history of Texas football. Eric Metcalf is probably the closest thing that came to it. And I don't remember watching Eric Metcalf, and I didn't document the Eric Metcalf games. But Eric Metcalf had some really explosive numbers in the passing game, ended up playing, receiver in the league. And so that's the closest thing I can come to it. And that, I don't know if you'll get that again, but interesting to see if this is a trend or if this is more of an outlier for Sark.
I just think it's probably a trend. And I think you look at running back targets, period, Rod. Just diving through some numbers from 2014, which is when, as far back as Pro Football Focus goes, and I got all these from Pro Football Focus, from 2014 to 2020. So that covers the entire Charlie Strong era, the entire Tom Herman era. Texas had 5 running backs in individual seasons where they had at least 20 targets. Keontae Ingram did it twice in 2019 and 2018. Trey Watson in 2018, Chris Warren in 2017, and then Malcolm Brown in 2014. All those guys had at least 20 targets. So 5 times from 2014 to 2020. In the 4 years under Sark, they have 8 20-target seasons. You go back to 2021, Bijan had 31 targets that year. You go to the next year, Bijan had 29, Keelan Robinson 22, Roshan Johnson 21. The following year, it was Jonathan Brooks with 29, CJ Baxter with 25, and then you mentioned last season. So what's interesting, too, you start looking at some of the yards per catch, yards per reception for some of these guys, and you start to remember, okay, yeah, they were used a little bit. Like, you wish Texas had another Bijan Robinson, obviously, but it's like you look at some of the things that Sark was doing with him in the passing game. Like, you go back to 2022, Rod, you realize Bijan averaged 16.5 yards a catch.
He was getting downfield.
Yeah, they were using the wheel route that railed, some of that Texas route, that angle route that we talk about. Bijan was doing some of that. You just haven't had that versatile of a guy. Now, you go to 2023, Brooks and Baxter both are kind of screen guys, like not really vertical threat guys. But I think now you start looking at the personnel, like you said, Jaden Blue last year. I even think Trey Wisner can do some of this where you get your backs more involved in the vertical passing game. But now, with Wisner, with Baxter coming back, I think now you've got the personnel to where, your running backs can be a weapon for you in the passing game. These guys are, are they Jaden Blue or Bijan when you talk about route runners? No, but they're still guys that understand the nuances of the passing game and can be effective catching a ball. So, again, I think this is something that's trending under Sark the right direction. I don't think it's going to stop, Rod.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of those things where he also was influenced that time. He followed Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta. Atlanta, that 20, you go look at it, Atlanta, that 2016 season right before Sark got there, he was that group had, I think Devontae Freeman had 65 targets. Kevin Coleman had 40 targets. And I think Sark, that's when he started to realize, like, no, man, we got to start using running backs more in the pass game. He was just trying to really, transition that offense into his own. And I think he took a lot of those kind of cheat codes that they use, those easy targets, basically extension of the running game a lot of times, the swing screens and then the actual traditional screens, then the check downs. But like we talked about, Sark wants to get him involved in the vertical passing game. I wonder this year what the challenge will be, because I don't know if he has a running back that provides, that type of skill set.
Yeah.
So it may be a challenge in that regard.
I think some of that too, Rod's going to be dependent on, we still don't really know what kind of throws to the backs Arch is most comfortable with.
That's true.
You go back and look at Quinn. Quinn got really good at just running the traditional screen. Then they would have some kind of bootleg action off of it, or some kind of hard play action. I thought Quinn handled the ball really well, was able to manipulate the defense with his eyes, with his feet, with his ball movement in the screen game. And yeah, you had your flares and things like that, but what is Arch going to feel comfortable doing? It may not be as much behind the line of scrimmage stuff with Arch. And I think that's the other thing, too, to consider when we look at the running back numbers in 2025 when the dust settles. I'm not going to be shocked if yards per catch and vertical routes and things like that, if it's not going up, yards per route run, if things aren't up just because with Archer probably more likely to push the ball down the field a little bit more. I think that includes the running backs and the position we're going to talk about here in a second. I think that includes tight ends too.
I do. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great segue because, in addition to, Sark saying running backs are the most underutilized weapon in the passing game, something else that sticks out to me that he has said multiple times, I'll never forget it because it really did made an impression on me. He said tight end was the second most important position in his offense behind quarterback. And we've talked about that plenty of times, but he has proven it to be true with the way that he has weaponized the tight end position. I mean, Gunnar Helm just got done having the greatest tight end season in Texas football history. I mean, you're talking about record for yards for a tight end in a single season, receptions for a tight end in a single season. I believe he's second all time in touchdowns in a single season for a tight end last season. And that's all been trending. It's been trending that way. I mean, JT had some blockbuster numbers in his 2 years as the featured tight end, and then Gunnar Helm last season. I don't know if you're going to have as lopsided of market target share, if you will, for that number one tight end going forward. It may be the case with Jack injuries this year, but I've said it before. I think ultimately Sark wants a little bit more balance with that tight end target share, because if you go look at it, I mean, since Sark has been here, I went and looked at the just the target share for the tight ends. You're talking about 70%. I mean, here it is from year to year: 69%, 93%, 79%, 85% of your tight end targets essentially have gone to the number one featured tight end from year to year for Sark. I think you want a little bit more balance there, but there's no doubt the tight end position at Texas. I remember I used to call it an endangered species on the 40 acres, and it was for like a decade and a half. It really was. After those Jermichael Finley years, it was just tough. Injuries. It wasn't always Texas issue, offensive identity crisis. But now Sark has made good on his statement that it's the second most important position in his offense. I think it fuses his spread ideology with the pro style philosophy really well for Sark.
Yeah, when you look at the history of it, Rod, like you look post Michael Finley, again, I've talked about some what ifs with guys at the NFL level on the channel lately. Like, speaking of tight ends, I felt like Jermichael Finley and Aaron Williams were the two guys in the NFL, like just when they started, like, okay, they've got their roles on their teams, they're comfortable, they've got, the franchise believes in them. Just when it felt like they were getting ready to take off, they suffered career-ending injuries. And you go back to 2008, as good as that offense was, how much more dynamic is it if Blaine Irby doesn't wreck his knee early in that season against Rice? We're still, it's one of the more gruesome, and I like Blaine Irby a lot. At the time I've talked to Blaine Irby, had great interactions with him, was great to deal with while he was at Texas, but still one of the most gruesome in-game knee injuries I've ever seen. And you're like, this guy's done. And it's amazing that he played again. Same thing with DJ Grant when he got hurt in a preseason practice. But like, Brian Harsin had an offense that could showcase the tight end. Mm-hmm. And you could see, like, he knew what to do with tight ends. He just didn't have the personnel. Like, he was able to milk the very last ounce of football that Blaine Irby and DJ Grant had in them. But, man, that was about it. And, Tom Herman and Charlie Strong, both guys recruited. And yeah, actually, it's funny. Brian Harsin did recruit Jeff Swaim, just never got to coach him at Texas because he ended up leaving and taking an Arkansas State job. But Charlie Strong and Tom Herman had NFL tight ends on their roster. They just really never knew how to use them. Obviously with Charlie Strong, it was the revolving door of coordinators. And we talked about with the running backs and that Sterling Gilbert offense in the veer and shoot. Man, the tight end basically is a sixth offensive lineman. If you're throwing the ball, there's a reason why when the tight end gets the ball thrown to them in that offense, why he's wide open. There's not a guy within 20 yards of him because they never throw the ball to the tight end. Yeah. And with Tom Herman, the pro spread philosophy, and you saw the tight ends Urban Meyer had, like, you're like, okay, yeah, I know how in this offense the tight end can be used. It never really got to its destination, though, the way I think we all thought it would. And I think the way Tom Herman probably thought it would. But Sark, not only does he have the offense to showcase the tight end, but he's got the personnel. And I think especially now that you bring in Jack injuries, like, of the 5 greatest tight end seasons a Longhorn has ever had, 3 of them are Sark tight ends, 2 for Jatavius Sanders and 1 for Gunnar Helm. So like
crazy, right?
The tight end has never been better to be a Texas tight end than right now. But I'm sure your boy Bo Scaife might have something to say about that, Rock. 2004 Texas offense, the tight ends were used quite well by Greg Davis. But I digress. But I think you look at the personnel now, bringing in Jack Andrews, a guy that is a proven commodity at this level. It's going to give you a little bit of a buffer for Jordan Washington to get his feet wet. Because Juan Davis and Gunnar Helm ate up most of the snaps last year, we didn't see a ton of Jordan Washington. So it'll give him an opportunity to get his feet wet. You'll get Nick Townsend will be able to work in a little bit, just kind of steadily. You probably end up seeing Emory Winston too at some point, who's kind of more of like an H-back sniffer type guy, but has great hands. So yeah, it's never been better than right now to be a Texas tight end.
Yeah, and I think it's still evolving to the point you brought up a lot of those guys. I mean, what Jerry's talked about, the kind of athletic profile of a guy like Nick Townsend, Jordan Washington, one of those guys too. I think ultimately Sark is taking the tight end position in a more freakish direction. Yeah. The one thing that the 12 personnel needs, and he loves 12 personnel. I think last year there was probably like 37% 12 personnel, which is probably the second highest since Sark got here. I think in 2021, he probably had the highest rate of 12 personnel because he didn't have a lot of the personnel groupings he was using. The explosive play rate is relatively low. You're in double-digit explosive play rate in your 11 personnel, even in your 21 personnel. It drops in 12 personnel. You don't get the explosive plays. You still get efficiency, probably higher yards per rush. You get your yards per attempt remain around the same, but I do think Sark wants a more explosive element in dimension to that 12%. If you're gonna have it out there 35+% of the time, then it needs to be able to generate more explosive plays. The only way to do that is to have more of, like I said, more balance in the target share, so the defense have to respect the other tight end, the Juan Davis or Gunnar Helm when JT Sanders was there, have to respect that number 2 guy, and also have guys who are freakish enough to stretch the field. To just be able to either get yak yardage for you or be able to make plays vertically down the field and beat guys on some vertical shots. So I think that's the next step for it.
One of the wild card things in there too is what can Spencer Shannon give you in the pass game? Because we know he's going to be the inline guy. That's going to be his job. And typically when Sark goes 12 personnel, the guy that is the true, like you go back to when Gunnar Helm was the inline guy in 2023. That's why his season last year, one of the reasons why it shocked everybody that he was a 60 catch guy, because the year before he was the inline guy. You weren't throwing the ball to Gunnar Helm, and the few times you did, he was wide open. So like they're not going to throw it to the inline tight end. Like they never throw it there. Well, a couple times they do, it's going to work. But what can Spencer Shannon give you? I think that's part of the problem with 12 personnel is it's been too predictable. Like, especially when you get later in the year, and Sark talked about this, we've heard him talk about it in the CFP. Like you eventually ran out of stuff to call. Like there was basically evolution of the 2024 offense had hit a dead end. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is, as much as you run 12 personnel, it's great. But at some point, the opponents have seen everything you're going to do out of it. It makes you easier to game plan for it. Now, part of that is, playing 16 games, and this was new for everybody. So maybe you give Sark some of the benefit of the doubt on that. I give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but now you've learned that. Now that's not an excuse. Now you got to be able to have this offense be able to evolve for 16, 17 games, and to be able to, when you get to game 16 and 17, be able to throw new stuff out there. That's about not being predictable, the aura of unpredictability, the element of unpredictability. And I think the only way you get that is when you're a package like 12 personnel, everybody that's on the field has to be taken seriously by the defense as a receiving threat. You didn't have that last year because of how you used Juan Davis. When Spencer Shannon's in the game, you got to be able to have that, at least the element of unpredictability where the defense has to respect the receiving threat.
Sark has never had that. He actually has more receiving threats on the field in 21 personnel.
Yep.
Than he does in 12 personnel. Like, that's why I think about your yards per attempt in 21 personnel. You're over 11, 12, and 10 yards per attempt the last 3 years. because everybody on the field is a receiving threat.
Yeah.
Usually when he comes out of that, because he throws the ball to the running back so much. And then especially when you got a guy like Jaden Blue on the field, or you had a Bijan Robinson on the field, in addition to your number one tight end on the field, and then your elite wide receivers on the field. So that's the next step for him. You want that 2004 tight end combination, that dimension where you had a Bo Scaife and you had David Thomas, both NFL guys, and both could easily beat one-on-one coverage and be receiving threats on the outside too. If you had to split them out, you can do whatever you want to do with either one of those guys.
There was a play in that Michigan Rose Bowl where it's a VY bootleg, and I forget who the Michigan defender was, but it was like the ideal situation where he's in conflict. He's like, if I cover David Thomas, Vince Young's going to run in this touchdown. If I go after the quarterback, if I go after Vince Young, he's going to lob it over my head. It's a touchdown to David Thomas. It's like, it's the ultimate, like, you're screwed as a defender. Like, you're absolutely 100% screwed, because whatever you decide, you're going to decide wrong. Like, that was the beauty of that 2004 offense. When VY, they really figured out, okay, VY can handle this part of the pass game, and he's good enough with the ball in his hands to be able to make those decisions. It really was at some. We talk about this offense and Sark having difficulties in the red zone. Greg Davis had an offense that, with Vince Young at quarterback, with Cedric Benson in the backfield, and Bo Scaife and David Thomas at tight end, you're unstoppable in goal line, short yardage, red zone situations.
Yeah, and then you had a big wide out on the outside, Lama Sweet. You can chunk it up to, if they just want to leave some young DB out there, you can just throw it at him. And ultimately, that's a good point. And you had Ramon Taylor, right? Didn't you have Ramon on that?
You had Ramon, yeah.
Yeah, so you had a wild card in there too. You can throw in there. All right, we didn't mean to go throwback and talk about 2004, but ultimately
we can talk about 2004 anytime. We don't need an excuse to talk about the good days, Rod.
But I do think that's what Sark wants to get to. It. Both of those tight ends are that dangerous. And to your point, though, and we can end it on this note, Jeff. The bootleg, that bootleg and moving the pocket, the waggles, that's coming back into the offense, because Arch likes that, and they like to move the pocket when Arch is in there. And so maybe that's a big part. And a lot of that is your tight ends being able to, those delayed releases, being able to work the middle of the field in the short to intermediate.
Hard old school play action is coming back to the Texas offense. And hey, again, to the point I just talked about, maybe that's one of the things to unlock your red zone offense, is just having that element of good old school hard play action. Because at some point the defense has to commit to something, right? They either commit to the run, or you kind of hang back and try to defend the pass. You can't do both.
Yep. It's a good point there. All right. Let's thank our sponsor one more time. Football Theory, brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So if you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, do not hesitate to give her a shout today. 512-784-0505. You can call her at 512-784-0505. 0505. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Thank you very much as well, Jeff, for your knowledge and expertise. I always leave here a smarter football theorist as a result. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, doing a great job, the real MVP, twisting and tweaking the dials. And for accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker, and for Matthew and for Jeff, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.